Hello and welcome. This is David with Mudslinger Pottery. I'm here in Charlotte, North Carolina on a Sunday evening working on throwing a few mugs that hopefully will dry up enough tonight that I can put the handles on tomorrow. But I thought I'd do a little video and just talk about some of the tips and tricks that have helped me out as I've made my pottery over the last 25 years. So I'm just centering the clay. I will basically wheel wedge it where I cone it up and then push it back down, and this helps to just get the clay ready to start pulling. So I've got a couple tips that I think will help you. I know they helped me, and when I started this, I started thinking of the old story of coach from UCLA, John Wooden, who, when he would get his freshman basketball players to this first camp, the first thing he would do was teach them how to lace up their shoes, which I'm sure a lot of those kids just thought, oh, this guy's an idiot, I know how to put my shoes on. But he wanted them on their feet tight, so there wasn't issues when they were jumping and running. And it's just one of those little tips that, you know, get your shoes on right if you're going to play basketball, so that it works out right, so that you avoid some issues. And pottery and art and any kind of sport you're in, there are all these little tips that sometimes you find out right away, and sometimes it takes years, and it's an epiphany moment. It's like, oh my God, why didn't I think of that sooner? So if you can learn a few of these tips, you will definitely start making better pots. So I'm just opening this up. I'm not going too wide. And I'm trying to maintain that center. That's why I clean up the top. I will center the top. Make sure I have compressed the bottom of my pot. But the other thing I want you to notice is right in here, and I've got that line. You can see that line that I've just created with my finger, and it's centered. You don't want to have a line where the clay is wobbling around, because this gives you a focal point and a reference point to a centered pot. So when I start pulling this, I've got this reference right down here that shows me this is center. I want to pull it up along that center line. So I use a sponge to pull. I used to not, but I found out it would tear up my fingernail, and using the sponge, I don't have that issue. So I'm going to make the first pull. I'm going to start slow. I'm going to clean up that bottom and get that finger into that sponge and pushing down into the bottom. So I'm actually making a little divot there. My first pull is up and inward. And then when I get to the top, I will compress the top and center the top. And I do that with my thumb and forefinger on my left hand and my right hand, and just making a little H. Touch it and just hold it here. And because I'm putting my weight on the pull noodle that I've got right here, I'm maintaining stability and keeping that centered. So I'm making a mug here, and you'll notice that it's fairly narrow at top, which is what I'm going for. Okay, so for the second pull, I'm basically doing the same thing. I'm not making the shape of this pot. I'm starting slow, making sure it's centered down there, and pulling up. And my goal here is to just raise the walls up and even out that clay. So when I do that, I create a distance between my two fingers and maintain that distance. I don't come out here and go up and down. I'm trying to create a distance and pull that same distance all the way up. And what helps me do that is by keeping my hands touching one another. It is much harder to maintain that distance if your two hands are not touching. But if they're touching, it's much more stable. It's not going to move. So once again, I am just using a damp sponge just to dampen the inside. I don't want it wet. I don't want a puddle of water in the bottom of my pot. I'm starting slow at the bottom, maintaining the distance between the inside hand and the outside hand, and I'm following that ridge as I gently pull it up to the top. Not fast, taking my time. And once again, I make my little H. Might need a little water here. And do this to maintain the center. Make sure the rim is not too thin. And I still have my two reference points right down here. You can see it's centered here. You can see it's centered here. Okay, so once more time, I dampen my sponge inside just so that my hands don't bind on the clay. It's got a little bit of water to help give it some lubrication as I pull this next pull. So now this pull, I'm basically starting to shape the pot. Starting to shape what the look of my pot will be. And one of the things that I learned after many years of throwing pots that was really an epiphany for me was that clay will go up, but clay will also go out. So if I make a narrower piece, a narrower cylinder, and then start pulling it out, that clay stretches and thins, and it also helps me to even it out and get that nice, even, balanced feel. So what I've got here is a piece of hard plastic that I've drilled a hole and then cut it off, and I use this to create a foot. So this area down here that has a little bit of clay, I'm not going to cut that off and throw it away. I'm going to push it into the bottom of my pot and create a little rounded foot that when I pull this off, I will show you what that looks like. I'm not sure if you can see that very well. But I now have a foot that gives me an area that I can glaze to, and it just looks good. It looks better with the foot than it does without it. So now I'm ready to shape the pot. This is not the final shape I want for my mug. And I use a stiff metal rib. This does not bend. And the nice thing about it is it maintains that nice, solid feel. It keeps a sharp edge. And I am basically trimming the pot as I shape it. So I want a little bit of curve here. I want a skirt on the bottom, and I'll show you that when I'm done here. So I create that little skirt down there with a bit of an edge, and then come in a little bit and on up. Sometimes this is an issue. I've got to work with this a little bit. Depends on how wet the clay is or how far I'm pushing the clay. So now I check it. Do I have issues down at the foot? No, the foot looks good. I'm going to leave it like that. I can look at my rim though, and I would think there's no way I would want to drink from that mug. Look at all these sharp edges. So what I do is I take a chamois, a piece of leather, and you can use a piece of plastic, but I gently put that chamois on there, keep my arm supported so it's not moving, and use it to clean up that rim, push down any sand or grog that might be be in that pot, and you can see the difference there. That is now something that I would want to drink from. I wouldn't have wanted to drink from it before. So taking care of some of these little issues, like the rim, helps make pots just that little bit better and takes you from a beginner to a more advanced potter. So let me cut this off. The other thing I do when I cut a pot off, I make sure my wire is clean, and I make sure the wire is taut and straight and pushed down as far as I can to the bat. And then I'll spin the wheel and slide that wire through the bottom of that pot. So I'm ready to take this off, and I do one other thing before I take them off. I just use a sponge, wipe off that bat, so that when this bat and this piece is sitting in my studio, this is clean, it's not drying up and getting dust all over my studio. And there you can see the shape of that pot, and you can see that little rounded foot that I've put on there, which I will just leave there. And it gives me an area to glaze to, and then the foot area I don't. So this has been David with Mudslinger Pottery here in Charlotte, North Carolina, out on my back porch studio. If you got anything out of this video, I would love you to follow. Hit that subscribe button on my YouTube channel. And I wanted to show you the mug after I've added the handle and trimmed up the foot that I was working on. So I've got the handle, I put a nice little bead right here. You can see the 3-footed foot that I think adds a lot to that pot, and my Mudslinger Pottery logo there on the bottom. So thank you all for watching. Once again, hit that subscribe button for me. Really appreciate it. Keeps me motivated to get out here and make some more videos. So just thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Get out in the studio and start practicing some of those tips and making some beautiful pots. You all have a wonderful day. We'll see you later.